6-year-old, she just nuts.
Remember to wear them.
That's right. I keep wanting my,
I've got
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the December 19th business meeting of the Littleton City Council. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Brinkman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez,
present.
Councilmember Cole,
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll,
Here.
Councilmember Elrod,
Here.
Councilmember Fay,
Present.
and Councilmember Schlachter.
Here.
Okay, we will rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, there have been no changes to the agenda, Council. Any changes from anyone?
No, but I wonder if everybody can hear us fine. Is it loud enough for everybody? Plenty loud.
How loud do you want to be?
Okay, so we will approve the agenda as is. This is a time for public comment. The public's welcome to come down and comment. We have a 3-minute limit. There is a sign-up sheet in the back, which the clerk is getting. If you did not sign up, then there'll be a time after I read the names on the sign-up sheet that you can speak. We ask that you please, if you haven't signed up, please give us your name and address. Thank you. Sorry, Kyle. The first one on the list is Linda Newfinke.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This takes skill.
It does.
Probably a lock.
Oh, that's easy. So for tonight, this presentation will show 2 scenarios to determine the impact of property tax increases of a potential merger with South Metro Fire. So what I did is I took a look at the calculation of the property tax from the state, and this is the Division of Property Taxation, Department of Local Affairs for the state of Colorado. So what it takes is the actual value times the residential assessment rate, which is calculated by the state, to come up with an assessed value, to come up with a tax rate, which is part of, like, say, Arapahoe County, the city of Littleton, South Suburban. So accumulation of that is your tax rate to come up with your taxes due. So I also took a look at the median price for a single-family home sold in November, and it is $405,000 from the Denver Post. So what I did is I created a spreadsheet to show the impact of increasing the mill levy. So on your left side, I have the actual tax rates that exist today, and this is using my house as a model. So you can see all the different taxing entity on the way left. And then on the right-hand side, where you see the little red arrow, that shows the increase in property taxes for South Metro. So we moved from 0.006662 and a total tax amount of $214.77 to using a tax rate of 0.009250 for an increased amount of $298.20. So that's a difference of $83.43, which is about as close to 40%. So that's a significant change in the property tax. So then I did a second scenario, and that's adding a mill levy for the fire. So again, in red, you'll see the city of Littleton. It's a separate mill levy for a fire increase, and the mill levy is 0.009250. Again, $298.20 is the amount of taxes, and that tax increase will be 139% of what we're paying today. So the question is, how are we going to pay for this? And I think City Council and the staff need to determine how the property taxes are going to be increased. Will there be a separate mill levy? Will they use an existing mill levy increase? Will it be a combination? And will service increases be so significant to warrant a tax increase of, potentially 40% or 140%? So again, this presentation's purpose is only to start a discussion or a dialogue on the impact of a move to South Metro. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. The next person is Carol Brizak.
I'm Carol Brizak. I live in the 4th District. I'm speaking tonight as a citizen and as a member of LIFT. However, I'm only speaking for myself. Council will be discussing the 2 vacancies on the LIFT board and a 3rd vacancy if and when Mr. Schlachter resigns. However, I believe there could be 5 vacancies. At the October LIFT meeting, the board discussed recent appointments that may not have been made properly. It was Mr. Kemp's advice to reconstruct the membership from the beginning to the present to uncover the problems. He advised LIFT to review the matter before making a recommendation to council. To date, that has not been done. LIFT's bylaws say LIFT shall meet on the 2nd Thursday of each month, and we had a quorum to meet last week. However, Mr. Schlachter, who maintains his chairmanship on LIFT, in spite of Resolution 55 that removed council members from the LIFT board, canceled the meeting. In emails dated December 6, 10, and 11, he wrote that he had asked the city clerk to cancel the December meeting as he thought it was most prudent to wait until new board members were appointed before meeting. Not because we did not have a quorum. In fact, he wrote that he never established a quorum. However, there was a quorum prepared to meet. He further stated that he will not run the meeting and he, as chair, retains the authority to create agendas and meetings. And since he had not heard from any other board member asking to have a meeting, nor were any other agenda items submitted except mine, which he deemed unnecessary, the meeting was canceled. The bylaws do not state that LIFT will meet when the board members request a meeting or when the chair believes it is prudent to meet, nor do the bylaws give the chair the authority to cancel meetings or create agendas. In fact, on your agenda tonight, you have a motion to cancel a meeting. That's how it should be done. Mr. Schlachter has made his intentions very clear. He will retain his chairmanship of the LIFT board until new appointments have been made. The proper staggering of the LIFT terms has not been returned to the LIFT board to make a recommendation to council, as they were advised to do by Mr. Kemp. This would have been done if the December meeting had not been canceled by Mr. Schlachter, in spite of the fact we had a quorum and we were prepared to meet. Mr. Schlachter does not intend to hold a meeting, nor does he intend to chair a meeting or create an agenda for a meeting. In other words, he is holding the LIFT board hostage, ignoring our bylaws and refusing to fulfill his role as chair. Until Mr. Schlachter resigns, LIFT has 5 members, not 4 as he suggests. Our bylaws recognize that a meeting shall take place when a quorum is present on the 2nd Thursday of each month. While a meeting of a quorum is not ideal, it is permitted, and he should not continue to arbitrarily cancel our meetings. Council has little authority over LIFT. However, council can intercede by affirming Resolution 55 and requesting Mr. Schlachter's immediate resignation, or at the very least, he should refrain from interfering with the LIFT meeting so the LIFT board can make a proper recommendation as to the correct number of vacancies, which will give any current member whose term expires the proper notice so they can reapply if they so desire. I have handouts for you. Obviously, don't have time to explain to you what they mean and how they're pertinent to the discussion.
Thank you, Carol. Next up, Pam Chadbourne.
Good evening, Council. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here, and I think both previous speakers bring up good points which you should consider. I wanted to talk about 3 things on the agenda. 5A is a resolution to approve a budget transfer related to police investigation, which I believe was looking for a murder victim in a dump. This is a comment. That same year, we had a fire in Southview Park Tower in April. And 130 aged and infirmed citizens were displaced with very short notice. In the city, I don't think had any money for them. Volunteers were required to save those people and get them housing. And these are people who do not have the physical ability or the financial means to do so themselves. It's interesting to me that the city has $500,000 to give to digging in a dump, but nothing to give to these citizens who were displaced, 132. Something's wrong here, Council, and I would like you to look at the issue of when there's a catastrophe, what do we have to help citizens out who have no other options? And I recognize that it's important to find a murderer and to help a family reach resolution, but It's also important to help 132 people who need it. I also want to talk about 5D, approval of the meeting minutes. And again, I would like to thank the clerk's staff for making such good comments on the minutes about about my comment on December 5th. It covers what I said well, I think, and I'm glad that it's on the record, the written record. And also I'll note that it applies to the comments and reports of council members and staff, managers, which is great. This makes these minutes much more valuable, I think, and I'd like council to continue that, and I commend the staff for doing it. Third, 6A is an ordinance on first reading to add preliminary project plan, and I'd like you to vote against this. I don't want this to see the light of day. The issue here is that our staff has said yes too often to applicants who should never be considered, whose proposals are so out of line that they shouldn't come forward. You should not replace that. Just tell the staff to say no when these inappropriate proposals come forward. Just say no. This gives too much power to Planning Commission and City Council, which you are not meant to have. Our code and our charter are supposed to say the way the city is designed, and they are deliberated and arrived at after months and years of work, as it should be. You should not be deciding development proposals willy-nilly each time. Instead, what staff should be working on is stuff like a transportation plan or defining what it means to say high-quality development, or affordable housing, or B2 height limits, or design standards and guidelines. They should enforce them, or examine the zoning map. So no, don't do the PPPP or whatever it's called. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Next, Don Bruns.
Can you please reset the clock for me? Thanks. Good evening, council members, and hello, new council members as well. Regarding the December 12th council study session, it's a good thing that community development staff outlined these 8 reasons why the Littleton Station master plan effort was premature. The effort was already premature 2 years ago when the Puma contract was let, because all but one of those 8 factors were already operative at the time. Only CDOT's preliminary environmental linkage study was not then known. Still, the growing traffic congestion necessitating the PEL study was also already in our faces. I went to meetings the city organized to hear from citizens, and I heard many of those concerns being expressed, and certainly you did also, which makes it all the more puzzling why none on council objected as the mayor chose the second option recommended by staff. First, that staff itself be directed, quote, to work on a draft plan for the Mineral Light Rail Station area that provides direction and guidance for future decision-making in this area of the city, and to do so within 18 weeks. That appears completely unrealistic for several reasons. A, as some of you emphasized, this area's future is in fact contingent on the Mineral Santa Fe traffic congestion's resolution. B, it is inconceivable that any kind of responsibly usable plan could possibly be developed without first addressing the other 7 concerns as well. And C, the development staff, indeed all of Littleton, cannot do this alone. Councilmember Valdez, your desire to take the lead cannot happen because you all hold only one set of reins to the team of horses driving through this area. D, although some of you said you didn't want the 3-month-long option 2 effort to land on the shelf, but how could it not if you allow staff to allow you to get out ahead of all of those contingent concerns and issues? I hope you can find the will to put on the brakes and instead choose to work in concert with all other key affecting municipalities and providers. Otherwise, development staff will do just that, court more development, and do so at the expense of Littleton's citizens, the area's superlative natural resources, existing area businesses, and thousands of motorists impacted daily by the current transportation snafu. Thank you very much. And I just want to add, I appreciate very much the city manager's efforts to work with CDOT and bring about the PEL study. I think it's tremendous. And as some of you acknowledged in the study session, we really need to do this. So thank you very much. And welcome all of you.
Thank you, Don. Those are the folks who have signed up. Is there anyone in the audience who would like a chance to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. And consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All the ordinance must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any item can be removed at the request of a council member. Item 5A, a resolution to approve a budget transfer related to a police investigation. Item B, motion to appoint Victim Assistant Coordinator Linda Suttle to the Arapahoe County Community Corrections Board.
Poll, please.
Been pulled by Councilmember Valdez. Item 5C, a motion to cancel the City Council study session on December 26, 2017, and the City Council regular meeting on January 2nd, 2018. Item 5D is the approval of the December 5th, 2017 regular meeting minutes. And I need a motion.
I so move.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve items 5A, 5A, C, and D.
Correct.
Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Councilmember Valdez, you pulled B.
Yes, thank you. Is Linda Shuttle here tonight? Okay. Can you, I would like a little description of what that particular position does. I wish you were here because I'd like to see who we're appointing. I know she's been there for a while. Just, this is a scary thing for me to ask you, but to keep it kind of short.
I know. Good evening, Council. Doug Stevens, Chief of Police here. So Linda's been on the Community Corrections Board for Arapahoe County for a number of years, as you can see in the both the letter from the board asking for her reappointment, recommendation for reappointment, as well as our council communication. She serves on the board making decisions on how the community corrections is managed and run for the county. She's the only victim person on the board, as you can see in the letter, with victims' perspective, victims' experience. Linda serves on the board as a part of her capacity as her official duties here, so it doesn't require any extra duty off time or off hours, those types of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, she is one of our city employees.
Yeah, she's our victim coordinator for the police department full-time. Yes.
That's good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
To appoint Linda Shuttle to the Arapahoe County Corrections Board.
Okay, we have a motion, a second by Councilmember Cole. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Chief.
Okay, move to ordinances on first reading. And a comment on process. I've spoke with the city attorney, and we do not, I will read these as ordinances as mandated, and I will then also read the stated date for the public hearing. When a council member makes a motion, they can simply do as Councilmember Fay did earlier and just simply say so moved. Then we need a second. So we don't need to repeat. Some of these, as we have encountered, can be pretty long, tedious. And I say it and then it's said immediately after. So we'll clean that up. Okay, so this is an ordinance on first reading amending Title 10 of the City Code to add preliminary project plan, and the public hearing and second reading is set for January 16, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. I need a motion.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, this is an ordinance on first reading amending Title 8, Chapter 11, Section 8-11-2 of the Littleton City Code pertaining to filing of special district service plans, and to schedule a second reading and public hearing for January 16, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second by Councilmember Cole. Ready to vote?
I just have
Oh, sorry.
a request for opportunity for additional specific information on what some of the expectations and process around that, this new scope of work, I guess, that we're taking on. Can we plan for that?
Councilmember, would you like, I can talk about that now, or I can just get with you if you have more specific questions. Like, if the council wants, I can do a short presentation as for the reason for this.
Can we plan for that at the public meeting or
Yes.
prior to for the packet?
Yes, we'll plan for that at the public meeting if that's agreeable.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
This is an ordinance on first reading amending ordinance number 23, series 2017, known as the Annual Appropriations Bill, and to schedule a second reading and public hearing for January 16, 2018 at 6:30 p.m.
I have some questions.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, motion and a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, Councilmember Valdez?
Yes, thank you. Let's see. This is Jocelyn. You're presenting? Thank you for coming down. So currently, we have a half-time employee within your department, and then we use contractors. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So then how many contractors are we using?
For plan review for the planning division, we have one contract with a consultant, and we have one person who provides us with 16 hours a week of help. We are working, it's very busy in the Denver metro area, so the capacity of our consultants, they are adding additional capacity for us, so we do hope to bump that up to 30 hours a week here soon.
So this one person, so we're not going to be using fewer contractors, but we are going to have an additional half-time, which takes it to a full-time position, basically. Is that right?
Yes, we do anticipate over time being able to reduce the amount of time that we're using with the consultant by having this full-time position. But in the immediacy with the workload that we currently have, we do anticipate in the next quarter, the second quarter of 2018, that we'll need both.
So is this person going to help reduce the time involved to pass plans?
Yes. That's
By
the
how
intent.
much?
We hope to get down to, currently based on workload and volume, we're at an 8 to 9 week review cycle. So we do hope to get that back down into the 4 to 6 time frame.
We hope to, or do we think this is actually going to do it?
We do think this will do it.
Having a
With the addition of our consultant help. And we're doing several things to further improve our process. As you know, council also approved a budget item to upgrade our Trackit, our database that we use to manage projects. So we do expect to gain some efficiencies. That happens next year. We are doing some reorganizing and restructuring of the division and the department, so we believe that will also provide efficiencies. So we do think that we will get there, and we do feel confident that we can get the review time down to 4 to 6 weeks.
And are our contractors doing timely work for us?
Yes.
Because I thought I read something in here, something about because everybody's so busy, we can't count on them necessarily to do the job.
Well, I think what we intended to say there was that we have contractors that can help us, but they're at capacity, so they really are having struggle providing us more people. So we're meeting our deadlines, but it is in that 8 to 9 week time frame. So by adding another half-time staff person, we do feel we can get a handle on that.
So if everybody's busy, that means everybody is delaying projects then, not just the city of Littleton.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
I think you said that it's difficult to get consultants to help us out or add more to their workload, to their bucket, because they're so busy. So that tells me other jurisdictions are busy as well, and I presume they too are taking the 8 weeks or whatever.
Yes, you're right. Region-wide, we are seeing a very busy development cycle for all the metro area, so other jurisdictions have similar struggles with keeping up with workload. That's correct.
And the contractors take about 8 weeks to go review the plans?
Yes, based on the volume that we currently have and their ability to provide us with
What
staff.
type of contracts do we have with these contractors? Do we have like incentive plans to get the work done quicker?
We have a contract for them to do the review. The issue is they do them as timely as they can, but it's the number of projects that are being asked to be reviewed.
I mean, do we
So-
say you have 8 weeks to get it done and they come back in 8 weeks, or do we have anything to give them incentive to
Well,
get
we
it done
give
sooner?
them, so they give them to us as soon as they can, but it's not like they're getting one at a time, right? We're trying to manage about 200 plus applications for this year, right? And fitting all of those in the cycle and the process. So they're managing a workload of, anywhere from 20 or so at a time through the
Thank you,
process.
Jocelyn, appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question.
Okay.
Following up on what Jerry said, if the longer time frame is normal in the metropolitan area, as per the contractors taking a while, why would Littleton want to spend more money to be faster?
I guess I wouldn't say it as normal. I think that it's the workload and the demand is what we're seeing as to their longer timeframes. So it's not normal, it's just based on the volume. So the more typical timeline would be the 4 to 6 weeks in a review cycle.
Thank you.
Anyone? Did Karina?
I have a follow-up. So obviously there's going to be ebbs and flows. So is the intent that the ebbs and flows of the workload are managed by the contractors? You'll either increase the work to the contractors or decrease it. This incremental half FTE truly becomes, did I understand correctly, that it becomes a full-time employee and will be what is now a half-time employee, a full-time employee for the city?
Yes, that is correct. And as you guys know, as the city, the projects that we're getting coming in the door now versus 10 and 15 years ago, we're really looking at more infill and redevelopment, and it's really the sites that were the harder ones to develop. So we don't necessarily anticipate a reduction in need relative to the complexity of projects. So we do feel that one additional current planner to do plan review will be a great benefit to the city and provide service. And absolutely, that would be the goal, that over time, as things ebb and flow, then we wouldn't need the contractual services.
So that's the flexibility that you're giving yourself to manage cost and demand. Is you still have the contractors that you're using now, and in the foreseeable future, you will continue to use. But if there is a slowdown, you can pull back on
And
those.
Current staff, full-time staff, they are doing a heroic job of working many more than 40 hours a week just to manage the workload that we do have. So we feel that that will also help with that.
Jerry?
No one else? We're adding $33,810 what we have. Does that include the benefits as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Carol?
What are the long-term ramifications of adding a full-time employee?
The long-term ramifications, well, I think in this case, I guess, worst case scenario, we get to a point in Littleton where we see a downturn that really no one's bringing any applications forward, and we get into a position where you're now looking at some version of layoffs. I guess that would be your worst-case scenario. Do we anticipate that with the hiring of this person? We do not, based on the infill and redevelopment and the complexity of the development review that we have right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Jocelyn.
Jocelyn?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the annual appropriations bill and set the second reading for January 16, 2018. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
This is an ordinance on first reading amending Title I, Chapter 9, Sections 1-9-1 and 1-9-2 of the Littleton City Code and setting the public hearing and second reading for January 16, 2018 at 6:30. I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from Councilmember Valdez. Council, any questions, discussion?
I have a quick question. Just in the way, as you know, I asked the question earlier, I just wanted to ensure cash was still an acceptable form. And is there any limitation of it has to be a minimum amount or no more than $1,000 in cash should?
Yeah, Councilmember Elrod, members of the council, yes, we will gladly take cash as long as it's in United States dollars. And the other reference is that if a bill is more than $5, it does have to be paid in bills as compared to coins. Occasionally, people will come in and seek to pay very large bills in pennies, and that does create some problems when that happens. So this gives the finance director the ability to deal with that as necessary.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. And council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. On to general business. Item A is a resolution to approve the release of funds in accordance with a 2018 budget proviso and the approval of a lease agreement for fire office space at 1221 West Mineral Avenue. And staff?
Always have to adjust that microphone since I am the tallest guy in the room. Keith Reister, Public Works Director. We're here to talk to you tonight about really two items. During the budget process this year for the 2018 budget, we talked about a variety of things related to fire and space planning and some other items. And as part of that, one of those items was an item to move fire prevention and fire review services from this building into the space that currently is occupied by fire administration at 1221 West Mineral. That's a lease space that fire administration is currently in. And there was a proviso put on there to do a little, council wanted us to come back and share some more information about that and a little more research based on specifically one question related to Geneva Lodge, who was one of the drivers of that. So for a little background in general, the Littleton Center here was built in the 1970s. And it was not designed for what we would expect to be modern office space today. The area where I work in, I believe there was 4 plugs in the entire area back there, and we need a lot more than that for computer space today, as an example. So this space has some limitations to it. Back in 2014, a space plan was done for this building, which really just looked at an expansion, and that looked at about $11 million in cost to do that. So as part of the research going forward, we discussed the idea of moving fire prevention to join fire administration at their building. They really don't have very much or hardly any walk-in traffic here. Most of their reviews are done electronically, and they also do field inspections. So we explored that option, and that lease space for the 12-month period would be $36,000. And in addition to moving them there, we would need to support that space with furniture. The space here would remain with the furniture as existing. At the same time, we also reached out to the current lessees of Geneva Lodge. For those of you who are not familiar with Geneva Lodge, it was in disrepair in the past. An agreement was made to allow a tenant to go in there and do rehabilitation in exchange for lease payments. That is Fisher Associates. Fisher Associates is still the lessee. They're in the second section of that term, and it currently runs through the end of 2020. That increases at a 4% a year rate in their current lease structure. Fisher Associates does not occupy the space. They sublease it to an architectural firm and some financial interests over there as well. That's who are the tenants in there. They are willing to let the lease go at the end of 2020, but prior to the end of the lease, they would be expecting a buyout of the remainder of that lease at this current time. In addition, related to this space here, generally speaking, we have, from a modern office standpoint, we have about 90,000 square feet of need and about a 70,000 square foot space in this building. There's a lot of space in here which is frankly unusable except for a few items. This room is a perfect example of that. If you take the overall hours in the week, this probably gets used about 0.5% of the time and really doesn't have any other utilization because of the way it was designed at the time it was done. So in addition to that, because of the needs over time, we've just sort of chopped up this space and not really led to ineffective operations. And when the one-stop shop development review center was developed, it was stuck out in the hallway, which is not the best work environment in general. And in addition, some of the things that are needed in a modern space like this, a municipal building here, are not present, specifically security issues. And security hardening is the term for that. And this building is pretty much devoid of that other than a few spaces. And that's actually an issue that we have ongoing currently in this building. So what this resolution does is release the first part would be releasing the $115,000.
May I interrupt you just one second?
Sure, Jerry.
On the hardening, elaborate a little bit more about what that is and what it is we're not doing and what it is we need to do.
Sure. In a modern municipal building, there are individuals in the community who come to the building with not positive intent in mind.
We're talking about physical threats, not
Physical threats.
cyber types.
Absolutely, physical threats.
And that's what okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, we had an incident in this building just in the last month where the police were chasing someone across town on foot, and they entered this building with employees in it in a dangerous situation. So that's, municipal buildings tend to have that space issue today. So that's what we're talking about there. So this resolution releases that funding to move fire administration to get them co-located, fire prevention, to have them co-located with fire administration at 1221 Mineral. That lease would be $36,000 or thereabouts for 2018. In addition, one of the other actions here is that we have not renewed the lease for fire administration over at that building, so that actually needs to occur as well. And that lease would run both of them would terminate at the end of 2018 under the current lease arrangements, which is actually in alignment with the greater fire discussions that are going on. Within this space, we've also contracted with Stantec, which used to be R&L Design when we started the project, but due to acquisition, they have changed, to do space planning for this building and look at alignments from everything from opening up the walls, realigning things to what we're calling a plug-and-play model, which is move people around. And as an example, in the fire space upstairs, there are currently 6 people in there, and with a new alignment, we would actually house 14 people in there. To allow some contiguity, some adjacencies, some impacts of flow and operations and those kind of things. So that's the intent, and we're here to answer any questions about that across the board.
Council questions? Peggy?
So will the lease have a clause to allow us to renew in case we don't do a different fire approach?
Yes, currently the way the lease is written for even the fire administration is we have that discussion with the landlord partway through the year. So yes, the renewal option is there.
I mean, because I'm not wanting to suddenly have everything over there and the rate doubles or something.
Yeah.
Because it's tougher then to come back.
Yes, absolutely. So the discussions have always been that it would, the increases are small, they're scheduled. It's not a long-term lease, though. We haven't signed like a 5-year lease with them where you have locked-in increases over a 5-year term. We have not done that at this point. And I think with the current situation facing the fire discussion, I'm not sure that the landlord would, I'm not going to speak for them, but I think that would be a tougher negotiation for us to put a long-term lease that would allow us an out at a shorter term, because that would be a different business interest for them. So we could certainly approach them about that to guarantee that longer-term space, but that's not the way the leases are currently written.
Karina?
So the immediate changes or impacts that we'll see in this particular building once we can move a few people around and reorganize, I think, the space that you mentioned upstairs from 6 to 14. Is that part of this move? So once these 6 individuals move to the new location, will that space be reconfigured so that it can accommodate some other people? Would we see that change happen?
Yes, that's actually fully the intent. That's part of the work that we're having Stantec do right now is look at a variety of alternative options. For example, how do we co-locate the communications department? Because they have never been co-located in the same space. How do we bring that work group together? How do we make sure that we have adjacencies between community development and engineering services, and moving those around? And right now we're still in that design phase. In fact, it's been a very interesting week for me as the on-the-ground project manager as we put out sort of an initial design and waited for reaction back from the organization. So that's been very interesting for me this week. And I met with actually them this evening to further talk about that. So the goal of that is to better utilize the space here in this building, to move forward so that we can provide better customer service, better flow through the building, and also better operational focus as well.
And so beyond the cost, so if I understand the cost correctly, it's $75 to just extend the lease that's currently there, to renew it for another year, and then a total of $115 for the fire permit to now relocate there between the lease amount, furniture, and relocation costs. Is that correct?
Yeah, and speaking with Chief Armstrong earlier today, the lease is at that 36 number. Having done space planning and office configurations before, we're only talking about 6 people in an existing space where you're not going to do wiring or any of that kind of stuff. The fit out for the space will not really be that expensive. I expect that to be less than probably 15. Based on my experience. And then fire is actually going to move all their own stuff.
So you're saying this is potentially on the high end? It might come in lower? Because it's
Absolutely. We fully expect it to come in lower at this point in time.
And the work that will happen here at City Center, I'm assuming there's a cost associated with that. What is the budgeted cost this year for beginning to relocate, move, and adapt?
Currently, at this point in time, we have some money in the general facilities budget to adapt to office moves throughout the year, so we can accommodate some of those. Part of the work that we're doing with the design consultant right now is once we kind of get to the next iterative design, which I probably expect in another couple of weeks, we already have a contractor lined up to do some takeoffs of that give us a range of costs going from pretty minor moves, moving the people around with not really moving any walls or minimal invasive work, to a much more, for example, the design that we kind of started with is if we went in and were able to move most of the walls around, kind of like a greenfield approach. And so you kind of got to start at that physically unconstrained place and get through some of those discussions and then work your way to a more reasonable solutions. And then this also sets up to talk about, how do we do sort of a domino approach? Maybe you do some this year, you do some the next year, you do some after that. So you're not really going whole hog all at once. So that's part of the process that we're using to do that. And I expect those numbers here in the next probably 30 to 40 days. So, and Mark can add to that.
City Manager.
Mayor, if I may. Let me just add to what the Public Works Director, Keith Reister, is sharing here. A lot of this discussion we actually had in the budget discussion here this past fall with the previous council, but I think just to clarify the budget, so the larger lease here for fire administration is out of their own line item budget in administration. So that's the 75,000 roughly. So the 115,000 that was in the budget, that is both to move fire prevention, the lease space of 30 some odd thousand, plus whatever furniture they need. The balance that's left then is to be used here internally in this building to relocate, say, the permit center. So we got to disassemble that furniture. Now, the good news is that over the last couple of years, we've purchased the same furniture, modular style, so we can disassemble that and hopefully use the majority of it. So that is the goal of the 115,000. Then, as Mr. Reeser is kind of pointing out, that's really the budget that we've allocated. I think we all recognize here over the last few years this larger space plan study that, 11 million we've identified, that kind of a project is many years away. So we do need to have a plan here so that we can approach the council and talk about, as time goes on over the next few years, how we might manage this building maybe a little differently, a little more efficiently. Space is definitely one of the issues. We've talked about the HVAC, the other security issues. So I'm confident over the next few years, we're probably going to be discussing with council maybe some other incremental improvements to this building, just in order really to get us by. Finally, the lease that expires here on Geneva Lodge. I think that's an opportunity to talk about how we might manage space here in the larger sense here for the Littleton Center. I also think that we'll have some other discussions here with council about Geneva Village in total, how the lodge fits into that. It's hard to say. But the lease is being, another couple of years, I think, provides that opportunity.
Thank you.
Anybody else have? Jerry?
Yes. How many square feet will be vacated then?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, it seems like that's in the 4 to 5 range. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can answer that. I looked at the plan set today, and it's just kind of
4 to 5,000?
Yeah.
So we have 6 people in that space now? So, and then we'll be leasing additional how much?
I can't remember if I put that in there, but I don't have that written in here. I have it in my notes, though. I can answer
Is it
that
comparable,
for you.
4 to 5,000?
Yes. It's actually it's actually probably going to be smaller. My recollection is the space we're going to is smaller. The fire space up there is, I think I mentioned in there, the space per square foot of the fire group is probably double any other space in the building.
Okay. So, and the furniture will stay here? Mm-hmm. And the furniture that we'll be getting will be leased or purchased?
We haven't settled on that discussion. I'm totally okay with leasing furniture in that circumstance. And that's something you can sometimes work out with the landlord. That's certainly an option.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Councilmember Fay?
Since you brought up this room, maybe not for this project right now, but is it in your radar to look at this space as being made into something more frequently usable than it is right now in the future?
Yes, certainly. Actually, every time I come in this room, one of the other things that the city manager didn't mention is last year we did a complete assessment of this building from an ADA perspective. So we have a number of issues. We're in the process of developing a compliance plan for that. This room specifically is one that is not anywhere near what we would expect in that area. I joke as a professional, I kind of feel like this is sort of a Hunger Games set sometimes when you kind of come down here to this little spot. Yes. So, I would love to see this space, go to, obviously a flat floor space that allows us to have mobile furniture. You not only gain that from a day use, for staff and larger meetings, but it opens up the space as a potential community room and all of those kind of things that we really don't have in this space today that you would expect in a modern space. Additionally, when you look at an expansion of this building, for example, almost building a new council chamber that's adjacent as a single level, that's ADA compliant, that can be used as a community room as well and do a variety of other things. I'd love to do some additional AV work in this room in general. As an example as well. So those are things that are all on our radar screen.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, council? I have a couple comments. I think that this is a good idea. I think that it is an efficient idea. I think that having departments split up is always just inefficient. the lease, the fire operations that are running out of mineral now, when we first started that, we're a little concerned about what that would feel like, but that's gone seamlessly, and obviously being able to utilize that space up there is great. It's disconcerting to really continue to, understand the challenges that we have with this building, and I think that this is going to be a broader discussion that council will be embarking on as we head into our retreat in February, because this is about the capital expenses that we have in our community, and this is not a building that is just for staff. This is a public building, and this serves our community also. We've always been really hesitant to do too much because we still have streets with cracks in them that need to be repaired. So when you're juggling where those dollars go, this building always comes up short, and it's like you said, we've got just a lot of deferred maintenance, and so it's challenging, and I appreciate that you're thinking about it, and I appreciate that you've got a pretty good solution for a current issue. So thank you so much. We do have a motion and a second, and this is to approve the funds.
We don't have a motion.
Oh, we don't? No,
No,
we need
Mayor.
one. We need, need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
Okay, this is a motion and a second to the 2018 budget proviso for leasing additional space for fire permit plan review. Ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, item number B, 7B, is a discussion regarding vacancies on the City of Littleton Urban Renewal Board. I believe City Attorney will be presenting.
Yes, Mayor. As council is aware, the Urban Renewal Board, commonly known as the NIF Board, standing for Littleton Invest for Them All, currently has 2 vacancies, and there is anticipated that the chairman will be resigning, leaving the chairman's spot vacant as well. The board has 7 members, so a quorum is 4 members. Now, traditionally, the city has filled those vacancies in the same manner as it has filled other boards and commissions, which means that we have normally started a interview and recruitment process in January with interviews in February and the appointments being filled in March. However, unlike the other boards and commissions of the city, the state statutes really govern the NIF board. So the council does have the ability to direct staff to expedite the recruitment for these 3 positions to move these basically forward as rapidly as possible. But that is really truly a policy decision for the council. So what's before the council tonight is simply a general business item. Does council desire to direct staff to expedite the recruitment and interview process for 1 or more vacancies on this board to fill those positions as expeditiously as possible? And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Councilmember Fay?
I would like to point out that city charter in section 37 requires that, quote, if a matter impacts a council member, the member will remove himself from the council vote. There's also the issue of City Council's resolution number 55 that removed council members from the LIFT board. Therefore, I request that Council Member Schlachter, sorry, Kyle, in his official capacity as chair on the LIFT board, either remove himself from this discussion and leave the room, or resign from the LIFT board at this time in order to remain in the room.
I would ask for advice from the city attorney.
Okay. Mayor, Council, if my advice would be that there's not an actual conflict here. Councilman Schlachter receives no personal benefit from whether this recruitment is expedited or not. In terms of even if all 3 positions, assuming that he resigns, he receives no personal benefit. The purpose of the conflict of interest law is to prevent an individual from receiving any kind of substantial benefit. The second fact here is that the expediting of these recruitments doesn't change the current membership of the NIF board. The issue here has been that it would not be appropriate for staff to engage in an expedition of the recruitment interview process when that's truly a policy decision for the council. So Councilman Schnachter certainly, if he wishes to recuse himself, he could. I don't believe that the statutes, the code, or the charter requires it, but I'll leave that decision to Councilman Schnachter.
Thank you. Council, any other questions? Councilmember Cole?
So if there were a challenge to a decision of the LIFT board, that would come to council?
In terms of, normally we would just do the recruitment process normally in the course of January through March. And it would come to council just like all your other boards and commissions do.
Wait a minute. I'm not sure that I asked a question that you answered.
It was a good answer, though, but just wasn't.
I'm sorry, perhaps I don't understand the question.
So if there were a challenge to a LIFT board decision, does that not come to council?
Councilmember Cole, members of the council, no. The NIF board is a separate political entity, and so its decisions in terms of what its board does or how it manages its affairs do not come to council. The only time it would come to council is the council, after a full administrative hearing, does have the right to remove a NIF board member. But that is literally the only time the council would be involved in the internal operations of the NIF board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Jerry?
Is there a January meeting scheduled now?
Is there a...
For LIFT, I'm sorry, was that the first Thursday? Is that when they do those? Second Thursday? Is there a meeting currently scheduled?
I don't believe that there's a meeting planned this month, and I think normally it does meet like on the second Thursday, but I'll defer that to the chairman because I don't believe that there's a meeting scheduled this month at this point in time. But normally I believe it's the second Thursday when the NIF board is met.
January 11th would be the second Thursday.
Councilmember Fay?
Of course, you're the attorney, but going back to Section 37 of the city charter, what I see there is it says that if a matter impacts a city or a council member, it doesn't say impacts the council member financially. And I would guess that there are ways that a council member could be positively impacted, such as span of control, influence, that kind of things, that is not financial.
Councilmember Fay, members of the council, certainly there could obviously be impacts on council member. The thing here is if council were to say no, it's not expedited, then these vacancies, however many there are, and who's to say there couldn't be a fourth vacancy or a fifth vacancy, they'd be filled in the normal course of business. The council member who is, as I anticipate, is going to resign would not be impacted by that. If council were to expedite it and they would resign, they would not be benefited. So either way, there is no benefit to the individual who is the council member. The real question here isn't so much NIF board, but really it's a policy question, which is, do you wish to authorize staff to depart from the normal process and expedite these recruitments? If you do, then we will go through the interview process, and then it will be council's determination what, if anything, they want to do with it. But it's not appropriate for staff to go through that process in an expedited manner without council having provided that direction. So that's really the question at this point.
Councilmember Elrod.
Can you share with us what the plan is if we were to expedite this, what that timeline might look like, different than the normal timeline planned for boards and commission interviews?
Councilmember Elrod, members of the council, I think the intent would be that we would look to work with the mayor, because unlike the other statutes, this statute actually envisions that the mayor would submit nominees and the council would confirm. We would work with the mayor under the state statute to determine if we have existing nominee individuals who have expressed an interest. And I think the intent would be, rather than having nominations coming to the council for confirmation in March, looking more at a end of January timeframe. So the idea, could we get to the 11th? I think it'd be hard put, because there's no more council meetings unless there was a special council meeting held. But certainly the goal would be that before the end of January, assuming that the mayor we'd be able to provide the mayor with a group of nominees, and then it'd be the mayor's determination whether to proceed with any of those nominees.
Thank you. City Manager.
Mayor, if I may, on the staff communication, to answer the council member's question there is kind of a draft proposal on what the schedule could be. So I'm referencing page 1 there of that staff communication. Advertising for the board members, January 8th. Advertising actually began December 1st as part of the city clerk's regular responsibility. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem conduct the interview sometime in between January 9th and the 19th. Present the recommendations to the council at a study session January 23rd, and then the council votes on February 6th.
So that potentially
Go ahead.
So that potentially sounds like there will likely be another meeting or the potential for another meeting of LIFT, and then by February, realistically, it could be a new board?
Councilmember Elrod, members of the council, yes, I would anticipate that on this schedule. And again, that is with the assumption that this candidates that the mayor wishes to bring forth to council and council confirms. But assuming all that to be the case, I would anticipate in February you would have those vacancies would be filled.
Any other comments or questions? Peggy.
So
you.
This town has had a very interesting history with urban renewal, with quite excited feelings at times. So my feeling is the more neutral we can make things by addressing replacements, appointments, the 2 appointments, the better it will be for everybody. This is nothing personal about our 2 council people. It is just part of the churn that has been associated with urban renewal over the years, going way back to the mid-'60s when the college was an urban renewal project. So,
Jerry.
I thought Carl was going to go. I guess my preference would be to place all the 2 council members. Have you already resigned?
I've resigned.
You've resigned, so we're waiting for one more. So I would want to even appoint somebody at that point, your appointment, that we would end up approving or not approving. But I would like that to include the chair of that board. I don't want to have a new one and then have to replace somebody again later. So I would like it to be a fresh board or authority at that time.
The intention is that there would be, at this point, with the resignation of the chair, that there would be three openings, 3 vacancies. And that would be, at this point, that's what the intention is to interview for. One of the reasons that Councilmember Schlechter is remaining on the board is because there is in some ways, a necessity that he does in terms of he's a signature. And it takes a bit of a process to transfer that signatory. And so that was his consideration in remaining. I don't believe that there's a conflict, and I would support Councilmember Schlechter staying for the vote. I think that the expediting of this shows that there is a value of importance from the council that this needs to be done at a different pace. This is obviously we get into the holidays and things become challenging. The benefit at this point is that the LIFT board really does not have any active burning business that needs to be dealt with immediately. So we aren't creating a problem for the board. In fact, what I think we're doing is, as quickly as we can, getting a full board for them so that they can go through the process of electing their chairman and their pro tem chair and moving forward with the business that the board is assigned to handle. So I would encourage a support of this, and I'll go ahead and call for a motion, and unless there's...
Let me add, if I have no issue recusing myself and leaving if it's the wish of the council, but you are correct in the reason that I'm on chair is I got legal advice from the city attorney with the signature powers, and that's the only reason that I've remained. I thought it would be inappropriate to have someone on the board that could sign that's not on, or someone that's not on the board that's the signing authority.
And you'll be gone by the February 8th, February whatever meeting then?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the intention at this point.
My intention is...
Till then, you're the signature guy. What do they write checks for at this point, anyway?
Right now, there's... I don't know if there's any checks that have to come in.
Okay, I mean, it's Valdez, VAO.
All right, so we need a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Second. And a second. Do we have a second?
Second.
Carol?
I said second.
Okay. So we're ready to vote. Do you have another comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Since we've heard Mr. Kemp say that there are 2 vacancies and a third coming, and I think we heard Ms. Brezak say that she believes, as a LIFT board member, that there are a possibility of a total of 5, that it would be a lot cleaner if we sorted out, or we have the vacancy issue sorted out before starting to fill vacancies. Therefore, I move that we amend the motion to require that interviews don't begin until council has received a recommendation from the LIFT board on the exact number of vacancies as the LIFT board understands it, and that the interview process is open to the public.
We don't have a second on the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
City Attorney.
Mayor, Council, unlike, as I mentioned, the other boards, this particular board, the mayor actually selects the appointees and submits to the council. And I don't know if the city in the past has actually followed the statute, but that's exactly what the statute says. For certainly, whatever process the mayor wishes to do, the mayor is certainly free to do that. It can be a public process, it can be whatever. My recommendation is certainly we want to stick with the statute which envisions that kind of process. And certainly at the confirmation time of council as a body can have whatever public process it so desires as well. But I would be concerned that if the council were to follow the normal process you follow for your other boards and commissions, particularly in light of the recent district court decision, which held that the urban renewal statute really does preempt both city code and city charter provisions. So my recommendation would be, it's certainly the motion's on the floor. If there's a second for discussion, if the motion is voted down, then the original motion is voted on. But my recommendation as a lawyer would be that we should try to stick with the statute in the appointments on this board, simply because it's clear, I think now, that the state statute preempts anything that the city has to the contrary.
Thank you, City Attorney. And I would agree with that. I think that we need to be very conscientious of that. And in part of the fairness, I've asked the Mayor Pro Tem Valdez to join me on these interviews, and we will be rigorously discussing these with council, which is why you can see the agenda. We're bringing it back to a study session in order to get a conversation from council regarding those interview recommendations from Mayor Pro Tem and I, and then it does come back to council for a vote. And I'm not aware that much that we do is not public, so I have no problem if these are public. I will not encourage that they be televised. We don't televise our boards and commission interviews, and so I don't think that that's necessary, but they'll be held in a public building with doors open. So did we get a motion in a second?
Yeah, we do that.
Do you have another? Okay.
Yes,
Do you have
We
another
need to
comment?
vote on the amended motion first.
Right.
Do you have?
One last question. So we're talking that this would be an open interview, but I'm thinking, because we're going to have to be aggressive on getting these interviews in, and it could be at the drop of a hat. I mean, with 2 council members, we're not required to do a posting, but I want to get these interviews happening quickly.
And Mayor Council, Mayor Pro Tem is correct. With 2 council members, it is not a meeting for purposes of Colorado open meetings law. And so in terms of the interview process, that I would defer to the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem as to how they wish to approach that.
As we proceed with the interviews and we have them scheduled, they can simply be noticed where we're doing the interviews at the times. It isn't a mandatory, I understand, but I think I would rather go ahead and offer the opportunity than to not. Okay.
And Mayor, we'll certainly work with you and the Mayor Pro Tem on all of those types of details through the city clerk.
Okay, thank you. This is discussion on the amendment. Karina?
So I just want to say our primary goal here and why this was even brought forward to us is because of the expedited nature and need to refortify that board. And I do think that what has been presented here gets us that. We likely have good qualified candidates from avenues, from prior years, et cetera, that I think this timeline is feasible. And given that it will come back to the full council, there's still an opportunity for further discussion there. So I do think this is a fair, equitable, and expedited process.
Thank you.
I do have one question about the number of vacancies, the issue you brought up. Currently, there are 2. There will be a third. I will resign when there is a appointment for my position. So I'm confused about any other vacancy. The vice chair resigned on November 10th. Councilmember Elrod resigned last week, and
It's 2. So you would be 3.
And I will resign.
We're looking at appointing 3. No matter
Yeah,
what.
3 is all that I am aware of.
I think we heard LIFT board member Ms. Brezak say that she believes because of the beginning of the terms of a couple members that their terms may be expiring shortly, and that needs to be examined closely to go back to the beginning of history. And apparently that was discussed at a LIFT meeting too, that examination of what the actual terms and their expirations are needs to be closely examined. And so I'm that's what I'm asking for, that examination be done before the interview process begins, so that just to be sure.
City Attorney.
Mayor, Council, I have worked with the city clerk on this, and what we will do is we will provide you with a schedule showing, in essence, there are 5 classes of members. 2 of the classes have 2 members each, and then the remaining 3 classes have 1 member, and we'll provide that information to you, and that can be distributed to the council. It's all public record.
So the alignment is correct. I don't have it in front of me. Do you know who, or does the city clerk know who the 2018?
I don't know who, but we can certainly provide that to you.
I believe I was one of them, but this question, I did raise this question earlier today, and it was provided from, I think, the city clerk provided the information, so it is in your inbox if you haven't looked at it yet.
Yep.
Thank you for doing that.
So I'm sorry, Pat, did you have a question?
No, I'm looking at the response there, and so we have 1 term ending in 2018, another term ending in 2019, 1 member each.
Okay. Councilmember Fay.
And there is a question, I believe, from existing LIFT member Ms. Brezak, there is a possibility that that's not accurate. And so just on that possibility, it's worth taking the time to clear it up rather than going forward in the process and having then to redo it. It's a small step to clear it up.
Okay. So, go ahead.
So looking at the LIFT board terms, it looks like one of the current board members, Kevin Seiler, term is ended in 2018. So that would be a fourth opening vacancy. He could reapply, I suppose. I don't know. I haven't.
Yes.
Right. I don't know if he will. I have not spoken to him.
But once we get a new full board in place, there could be a new dynamic.
Yeah.
It could be, but I think the issue would be if there is a term ending in 2018, that would be a fourth person to open.
So the ask, to try to summarize, the ask appears to sound like identification of number of positions that would
Corinne,
be eligible.
I'm going to ask
Okay.
Councilmember Fay to reread her amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And we will reread the amendment, and then we're ready to vote. Okay, thank you.
Sounds good to me.
I move to amend the motion to require that interviews do not begin until council has received a recommendation from the LIFT board on the exact number of vacancies, and that the interview process is open to the public.
And we have a second on that motion. Ready to vote?
Sure.
The vote is 4 in favor with Councilmember Driscoll, Councilmember Schlachter, and Councilmember Elrod voting no. The motion carries 4-3.
Okay, we're back to the original motion, which is to direct staff to work with the mayor and the mayor pro tem on an expedited recruitment process on the vacancies for the LIFT board. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, council.
Man.
Now we are on to item 8A, which is ordinance 35-2017, an ordinance on second reading amending Title 3, Chapter 9, Sections 3-9-1-2, 3-9-3-2, 3-9-1-10, and 3-9-6-12 of the City Code, enacting and implementing standardized sales and use tax definitions. Council, we've had a conversation about this in a study session, and Finance Director Hooton is here if there are additional questions of staff at this point, or of council at this point. No, seeing none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:46. We have no one signed up to speak. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Pam?
My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. And my question about this is, during the study session, the city attorney said that changing the definitions didn't change the taxes at all. Yet, another argument was there's confusion by these poor business people because the rules are different in different municipalities, so we have to change the names, and those are inherently contradictory. I do not understand that. If the businesses want the definitions to change because they're different in different judicial areas, then how can changing the definitions not have an impact? So that's my question. Doesn't make sense to me. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. Anybody else? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing at 7:47. And council, I need a motion, please. You can do a so moved.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes. Just one question for our city attorney. So, and to be clear, and I asked you at the study session, I've asked you at least once, I know, that this does not change or increase taxes in any way, shape, or form. It's just a matter of definition of what is agriculture, what is a hat. I mean, it's those type of definitions, if I'm not, as I go through this thing.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, that is correct. This is not a tax policy change under TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, commonly known as TABOR, that requires TABOR compliance. This is simply bringing our definitions into conformance with the uniform sets of definitions that have been adopted in 22 others, and actually are now pending in a 23rd city in addition to Middleton. And this is simply bringing those in. So there is no intent here to raise any additional revenue, no intent here to adjust any taxes in any way, shape, or form, or make any other kind of tax policy change.
And if we later found out that one did do that, then we would have to go to voters if that's what we were to do.
Yes, if we actually were making tax policy changes as defined by the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, those do require voter approval. I can tell you both myself as well as the other 22 city attorneys, as well as some very knowledgeable people on the Tabor issues, we've all looked at this and we have all come to the same independent conclusion, which is this is not a tax policy change, and that's actually consistent with the decisions of the Colorado courts as well as the California courts, who have interpreted the what I would call the grandparents to Tabor in their state.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council. We have a motion and a second on the table. Are we ready to vote?
Yep.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Ordinance 36, 2017 is an ordinance on second reading, amending ordinance number 21, series of 2016, known as the Annual Appropriations Bill for all municipal purposes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2017 and ending December 31, 2017. Staff, is there any presentation on this? And council, is there any questions requiring a presentation? I think we're good. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at 7:50.
Do public hearing on this?
Mm-hmm. And is seeing no one signed up, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this issue? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at 7:51 and ask for a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance 36-2017, so moved.
And a second? Jerry has a second.
Can you guys say your seconds into the
I was
microphones,
just saying,
please?
I didn't actually second it, but I will second.
Oh, I thought you did.
I would like to second that, Wendy.
I do it by
Okay.
sound, so I need you guys to talk into the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready to vote? Okay.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, this is a ordinance 39, 2017, which on second reading amends the 2017 Emergency Medical Transportation Enterprise Budget. Council, would you like presentation or have any questions of staff? I think we're good. Thank you, Tiffany. So we'll open the public hearing at 7:52. There's no one signed on the roster. Does anyone care to speak? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing at 7:52, and I need a motion.
I so move. Wendy.
And a second?
I second.
There you go.
Pat's a second. So we have a motion and a second. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Nicely done. That moves us to, it helps having these conversations, thank you, helps having these conversations where we can get a lot of our information early on, and appreciate that. Now, comments and reports. City Manager, do you have a report?
No report, Mayor.
Okay. Council, I'll start with Councilmember Schlechter.
Yes, two things. First, I just wanted to report that I attended the CU Economic Outlook Forum last week, and just wanted to report that CU is looking at a positive economic environment next year, a slight reduction in the number of jobs created, but still a very strong economy. And two of the things that came out of that, some of the issues that we're seeing in the economy is, not surprisingly, transportation and affordable housing are two of the big issues that they talked about. And second, another meeting I went to 3 weeks ago, was the Jefferson County Quarterly Meeting of Municipal and County Leaders. At that meeting, the Westminster Youth Advisory Panel presented to the various council members there, and they presented about their organization, how they actually have a panel made up of high school students in the community that interact with council and provide advice to council. And I think that was a great idea. I would love to see something like that in Littleton. I don't know what shape or form it takes. I've talked to the city manager about getting some ideas of what that may or may not look like in Littleton. Another thing they also talked about was the Rocky Mountain Youth Summit, which is at the end of February 22nd, 23rd, that they were hosting, putting on, student-driven, and I thought that was a great idea to have these young adults in there trying to get together to have a leadership conference, and the Westminster mayor asked the other municipalities to consider sponsoring the summit to a tune of potentially $500, and I was wondering if that would be something that the council would approve of or think would be beneficial to the larger community.
Do we have any Littleton kids going?
I've reached out to Superintendent Brian Ewert, and I have not heard any confirmation if they are going to go. They said they were going to discuss it with the principals, but they have not had time to actually discuss this.
And thank you for the information. That was good information. We still have a little time before we can have to make a decision, don't we?
Yeah, it's until February. They asked by Christmas, but I don't think they would reject money after the fact.
No, they won't, but I'm not sure I want to give money if I don't know who I'm giving it to. Let's find out who's going. Yeah. I think that'd be great, because we have 3 high schools. We have Littleton, Heritage, and anybody know who's the third one?
Arapahoe?
Options.
Oh, in the city, sorry.
It's a trick question.
It is. Yeah, let's find out who's going to go. That'd be great.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, good. Councilmember Fay.
Following up on my appointment as the liaison from council to the Fine Arts Board, I took a tour of the museum, and I was stunned at how wonderful the things are going on there, not only the outdoor museum, but also the indoor fine arts piece of it. And I found out that the museum is sanctioned through the Smithsonian and conforms to all of its many requirements, including security and climate control required for getting visiting displays from the Smithsonian. I had no idea. So I'll share with everyone that anyone can request a behind-the-scenes tour, arrange it in advance through the Tim Nins, the director, and it is just totally one of our gems of Littleton.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
I have 2 things. About a month ago, maybe now, we did host an event for scouts in the area. About 40 scouts attended, and it was hosted by Kelly Nardi and the former mayor, Bruce Beckman, which is also a scout, was here to just kind of talk about civic engagement and community. We actually held some mock council sessions for them as well, and they did quite well. So I think there was definitely an interest to continue to participate in different ways, and it's encouraging to see truly these younger kids, even with what Kyle shared, whatever we can do to continue that momentum. And Kelly really just did an amazing job helping to coordinate and facilitate that. So thank you to her and to Bruce Beckman, of course. And the other thing, tomorrow will be my first meeting that I will be attending for Dr. Cog for Denver Regional Council of Governments. So I'll have a report out after that meeting to share with you guys.
Great. I understand there's a very important vote tomorrow.
There is. The one particular item is that some of the decision-making around funding is being brought forward to bring down more to the local level. So I think that creates an opportunity for us to, at the local level, to influence to a greater degree. So that is the key item that will come up tomorrow. That's important.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Cole?
Yeah, so just an observation about our museum. It is, one of only a couple museums of cities our size, for cities our size, that are Smithsonian affiliated in the whole country. It is an incredible achievement that we are. So that's one thing. Then I did attend the quarterly CML meeting, and you all were supposed to get copies of the proceedings of that. So if you didn't, I guess, I'm not sure who, maybe Kelly, let Kelly know.
And this is for the policy board?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
We'll remind Kelly.
Pardon?
Okay. Thank you.
Very informative. Nothing earth-shaking, I think, in decisions, but all these things have cumulative effects. So,
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll?
Yes, I'm the liaison for the Littleton City Merchants, and I'm happy to say everybody's enjoying a good holiday season so far with positive people attending their stores. So that's exciting news. And also myself and Councilman Cole and Kyle, I believe you were there, but we were there at a groundbreaking ceremony for the building down on
What's his
Main
last
Street.
name?
Schlechter.
Okay, I just wanted to.
And yeah, I know. And so Bristol Cone finally broke ground. They've been waiting on Excel to move those utilities, so they're moving, shaking on that building finally.
Good. Thank you, Pat. Councilmember Valdez.
Thank you. Just on one thing, for the apps for the Lyft folks, that we're going back, we are going to pull out some of those old applications that we had in the past or recently, last year at least. That's part of what we're, the process.
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, if you would, yeah. Because I think we always tell the folks that we're going to keep them on file, in file,
I keep
or whatever.
them.
So if we could do that.
Sure.
Cool. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Just a reminder, kind of tagging on what Councilmember Driscoll said, that when you shop locally, 90% of what you spend stays local. When you go on the internet, it doesn't. So
Amazon,
there
though,
is
they collect.
90% stays local, and the 90% comes from the fact that they are people who are artisans. They buy their products locally, and whether it's local Littleton or local general area, but they live here, they raise their children, they shop here, as opposed to buying, outside where a lot of that goes to China. The South Platte Working Group met, and we should have a final for council in January of the draft, or it will be a final of the development document that we have put together. And so I'll probably just get that out to council. It has been blessed. I think it's a productive document that will help with our development. It'll also be something we can integrate as we talk about the comp plan and those issues in February at our retreat. So I don't have anything else. I would extend, on behalf of City Council, to our entire community, happy holidays. Hope everybody enjoys time with their family and some time to relax, and we'll be back next year. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.